everyone. Welcome to A New View. I'm Kim, and I'm here with Shira, Lee, and Juji. We are four friends, speakers, and professionals from different cultures, backgrounds, and age groups coming together to offer healing and inspiration. Our special guest today is my friend and colleague, John Henry. John is a lifelong educator. He currently develops and leads training programs as Senior Manager of STEAM and Sustainable Schools at the New Jersey School Boards Association. After John learned that he had hairy cell leukemia in 2015, he applied a holistic approach from what he learned through the Radical Remission Project and was able to stabilize his condition. He currently helps others with cancer so that they know and understand complementary options exist to guide them through their healing journeys. I'd also like to add that this man has a heart of gold and is absolutely hilarious. We are so excited to have this conversation today. Hi, John. Welcome. Thank you so much.
Good morning.
John. So nice.
Good morning.
So, John, the first question that we love to ask all of our guests is, what is the best compliment you have ever received?
So before I answer that question, I want to thank each and every one of you for this opportunity. Yeah, because some of the topics that we're probably going to be talking about, I think, can help others. And speaking of helping others, that's probably the biggest compliment, and in at least my professional world, is that I was helping children, because I've been in education for 27 years. And, many people have, said that I've made a difference in public education in the state of New Jersey. And I'm very proud of that. And it's a very high compliment for me. So I'm going with that one.
I love that.
Thank you so much for all that you do for children. Gosh, that must be so rewarding.
It is. And, there's a lot of great educators and administrators and board members in the state of New Jersey that makes it a great place for public education. And I'm just really happy to be part of that. And, I've been in different capacities in 27 years of my, education run. And and I ended up at School Boards Association for the last 10 years. And it was great to be there and to make a difference at that level. So, that's a compliment, that, people do tell me, is that, hey, you made a difference in kids' lives. And that's what I started out doing when I chose this as a profession. So.
Yeah, wonderful. John, I believe that these days you're involved in some other things as well. And one of them is the Radical Remission Project, which I'm fascinated by. And I'd love to hear a little bit more and how you got started with that.
Yeah, it's I don't know how much time you guys have, but this has been a long journey, and it's interesting because the Radical Remission Project, and I'm going to go into how I came to it, but just a little background on what the Radical Remission Project is. And this is really important that people understand that this project and the books that came out of the project are critically important for people who are dealing with cancer and chronic illness. And so the Radical Remission Project, and Dr. Kelly Turner she was doing research, and she was discovering that in some of the case studies, they were calling them spontaneous remissions. And so she was very curious about, why are they spontaneous remissions? And really is what's going on here. So she kind of launched this Radical Remission Project to determine what a radical remission really is. And so a radical remission is when people actually have a remission either without conventional medical treatment, after conventional treatment has failed to work, or when conventional and complementary methods are used in conjunction to overcome pretty much a dire prognosis. So what I think, and I'm personally so grateful for Dr. Kelly Turner for doing this, is because once her book came out and I discovered it, it made a huge difference in when I was dealing with cancer. So a little bit about how I discovered Radical Remission, Surviving Cancer Against All Odds, the first book that came out. And now there's a second book, which just came out just recently, called Radical Hope, which is an updated version of the science and different stories in the book. So in 2015, I was diagnosed with, at the very end of 2015, I was diagnosed with hairy cell leukemia. And I did the traditional, routine, so to speak, is when you hear about you have cancer, your pretty much scared. You're not in the know because you're not an expert. I vaguely knew about what leukemia was, but when you get hit with the diagnosis like that, you immediately go into fear and panic because you know that it's a life-threatening situation. So I went to a cancer center, and I was going through the traditional testing and monitoring and giving me options. And like, say, 6 months, 8 months into my diagnosis, I had an oncologist, and I also was seeing a hematologist. The hematologist was more of a integrative medical doctor. And I started to do a lot of homework on my own, because I always tell people, if you get a diagnosis of cancer, the first thing you need to do after you get over the fear and the shock of it, and just you're trying to wrap your head around it, is get into action. You have to be in motion about your diagnosis. You have to be doing something about it. And what that does is it's really distraction. So I distracted myself with research. So I went in, I had, like I said, it was like about 8 months into the diagnosis, and I was talking to my hematologist, and right at the very end of my visit, he saw that I was frustrated because I'm asking him questions now, which I thought were intelligent questions based on my research. And he said, look, I want you to get a book. It's called Radical Remission: Surviving Cancer Against All Odds by Dr. Kelly Turner. So of course I wrote it down. I got the book, and it was absolutely amazing what Dr. Turner had done with that book. She identified 9 healing factors that were common for remissions that all of the people she interviewed did. And then what else she did is then she attached the science to each one. So it wasn't like, woo-woo stuff. It was like, okay, nutrition, here's why this helps cancer. It was emotional, releasing positive or increasing positive emotions, releasing suppressed emotion, things like that. And we can go into that more in detail later. But once I discovered that book, everything started to change for me. And the easiest thing for me that I did was to jump into the nutrition. And in the book, it's most of the cancer patients were radically changing their diet. Like, for example, no meat, no sugar, no dairy, and limited wheat, right? So I went from eating a standard American diet to that. And within, like, say, 6 to 8 months, I lost over 38 pounds. I started to feel better. My energy level started to come back. And so what I, in essence, was doing at that point was managing the cancer. I wasn't healing it at the point, but I was definitely managing it to the point where it stopped the progression of leukemia for almost 4 years or so. So what was interesting enough about Radical Remission Project is it was to collect the information about what people were doing and then actually put the documentation out. And Dr. Turner, what she was noticing about in the book, or not in the book, but her research, is she was discovering through these case studies that there was information that was missing out of, like, let's say the 1,000 case studies that were published in medical journals, right? Or medical journals. What was missing is the cancer patients themselves. They were not asking the cancer patients what they did to get to a remission. It was just not mentioned in any of these journals, right? And they also did not mention the alternative healers that they were working with, because these folks did this on their own, and they did it with their funds, or they did it as inexpensively as they possibly could. And so that was actually really important to me when I discovered these things were out there. And sadly enough, I remember, like, maybe it was probably like 2 years into my diagnosis, and I was going like every 6 months or so to the cancer center to just, check my blood and talk to the doctors. And as I was sitting in the waiting room, I would be watching people walk through the doors with bandanas on, no hair, in wheelchairs, being assisted with their, help from their family members. And at that point, I know that the medical arena was not telling these people about radical remission, for that matter, for anything else. Maybe limited, maybe, do some yoga, do some acupuncture, a few things. Maybe, I don't even know if they were really telling them to change their diet. I know they weren't telling me that. Now, that being said, you need the traditional medical on your team. And this is by no means putting the medical arena down. You need them on your team. They're great at, collecting the data, their blood work and all of that. You break an arm, you want a doctor on your side, right, to fix that. But from what I saw, they were not sharing all that they can share. And I understand that there's some liability there, and that's not what they do. But it would have been really helpful if it was part of the program for dealing with cancer, is that say, hey, there are other things that you can do.
John, may I interject for a moment here? I'm a 3-time cancer survivor myself, and listening to you, I've had such a similar, everything you're saying is very, very similar, especially when I was first diagnosed at age 32. And I was, terrified. And then I started my sister actually inspired me to look into some more holistic methods of kind of healing myself and eliminating cancer. And I came across a couple of books as well that they were like my Bible. And this started my own experience and journey down this road of like, oh my God, like we can cure ourselves or we can heal our own bodies, but over the years, I've collected more and more and more tools. And I too started with the whole nutrition aspect of it. It is amazing that when you start to do your own research, which I did very early on, you can go down so many rabbit holes. You can get different, obviously, opposing opinions from so many people. And the fear there also is to not listen to the doctors, so that's one fear. And then until you start to gain some kind of confidence. But I found some spontaneous remission books that I read, and I was fascinated, blew me away. I'm like, where are these people? What are they doing? I need to know. And exactly like you said, it just, I couldn't find it. And we're talking, this was 1999 for me at that time. I couldn't find it until many years later, because I've been seeking it out. And so similar to you, and it's amazing. It's a lot more out there today. I feel it's a lot more available for people who are open to these tools.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and I'm glad that you made it through all of that. I know from my experience that it was not easy. It was challenging. You did it early on when the information wasn't that readily available. So you had your challenges of it probably existed in some way, shape, or form, but finding it was difficult. Today, there's no excuse. If you want to see alternative or complementary healing methods, modalities, they are available. And a lot of people put some great resources together to say, if you will have a choice here and you have your option and you want to get into this, you can get it at any time. Now, that being said, you did mention, the rabbit hole of the vastness of information out there. That is very, very confusing. Even in the nutritional arena, should I do keto? Should I do all plant-based? It's very, very challenging to find what works for you. And I think everybody's journey is a little bit different, but there's some fundamentals that you can do.
Yeah. And when it comes to nutrition, actually, so one of the things that I've discovered for myself is that I was very radically transforming my diet initially as well. No dairy, no sugar, no meat, nothing. And that was not sustainable for me. Although my diet has become so much cleaner than it used to be. I also was on the SAD diet, standard American diet.
I love that. The acronym fits it. SAD. SAD. It is SAD.
It is. So these are things that were, new to me, and I learned all about it. But I think with my my other 2 times that I was diagnosed, I came to discover other things that I needed to work on in my life. that helped, because it's not just the nutrition aspect that's going to cure anybody of cancer. You can eat as cleanly as you like. You can be as active as you like. But there are obviously, and I'm sure they're in these books that you mentioned by Dr. Turner, several different aspects of life really have to, we need to be aware of and implement.
Can we get really specific about those things? Like, I would love to know for both of you, like, what is maybe the most woo-woo thing you never thought you'd ever do as a part of your radical remission? Because we always talk about nutrition as like the first step in like the cleaning out process. But I think that both of you had discovered that there was a lot more like emotions that had to be worked through. And like, so the physical needed to be addressed with other psychological and emotional tools. Like, John, what was something that you started to do that never occurred to you may be a part contributing?
So I'm glad you brought that up. So what I didn't mention is what the 10 healing factors are. And yes, the nutrition, the healthy eating was my entry point, if you will, because I could do that. Like when I was diagnosed, and I found out that, I should change my diet. I could do that like today, right? I can go to the store and I can make choices. That was within my grasp, right? So that was the first thing. That's one of the healing factors, is strengthening your immune system by changing your diet. So, and this is really important, because when you change your diet, you're eating healthy, but really you're increasing and you're boosting your immune system to fight. And I don't even, you know what, let me change that to heal from cancer. I don't want to use the word fight, because even in your language, fighting could mean stress, right? So healing from cancer could start with nutrition, but it's really about boosting your immune system. The other one, another healing factor, is feeling more empowered with your health, or really taking control. Do not be a victim. And I always say, don't listen just to the doctor, and maybe just don't listen to your family members. I mean, you gotta, and another healing factor is following your intuition, your gut, what feels right for you. That's actually that was actually really interesting when I was looking at the book for the first time, and I said, wow, you can follow your intuition for healing from cancer, right? That was something that was really kind of outside my world. Releasing suppressed emotions from the past, or even something that's going on right now, like fear, guilt, resentment, things like that. This particular one, to answer your question, was the hardest for me. Is because I think, men kind of hold on to things a little bit more, and releasing, my emotions was really challenging to me. First, identifying what they are, like, what am I really holding on to? We get so used to burying our emotions that first you have to identify what they are, and that takes some work. And I think that was, for me, that was the most challenging. Increasing positive emotions, doing things more that are fun, going outside, doing things like that, spending time with, another one is social support, increasing your social support. You cannot go through cancer or chronic illness alone. Some people don't share what they're doing or what they're going through with people. And I think that's, and again, this is just my opinion, I think that's a mistake. I've known people to keep very quiet about it until it was too late. I told everybody in the beginning, and I was just very open. So my transformation, if you will, was to be very open and just say, hey, I'm dealing with this. And that was incredible, because people were coming up to me and just saying, hey, have you learned this, or I've done this, or did you hear about this resources? It was unbelievable, the amount of support that I was getting. So, increasing your social support and just being open about it instead of closed it could be game changing, and accepting. The other thing too is accepting, within that category, is accepting love from others. You can accept support and help instead of, no, I got this. I'm a man. I got this. No, you don't have this alone. You need a team, and let others help you. It's just incredible what you can do. Daily meditation and things like that. And meditation could be different for everybody. It doesn't mean that you have to sit there with your fingers, like this, and meditate in its position. It could be meditating and going for a walk. Another big one in the radical remission books are spirituality. People connect, I think, more when they're faced with a dire prognosis. And the 10th and final factor was exercise and movement. Now, in the first book, Dr. Turner didn't put exercise in the book. There was only 9 factors because people were pretty sick at the time, so they weren't exercising at all until they were able to. But all of them did when they got to a point by doing the other factors. They included exercise. Exercise was critical to me. And, like working out or walking and exercise doesn't mean you have to go to the gym and lift all kinds of weights. Exercise could mean just simple walking, moving. And if you're too sick to do any of that, just walk around the block, do something, move your body. And so those are the healing factors. And the other one is, I think the final one is decreasing the negative emotions, getting rid of toxic feelings, getting rid of even toxic people in your life. I think when you get a diagnosis, you have to make a decision who's on your team and who's on your team that's going to help and support, or who's in your life that's not going to help you and is going to cause you grief. And if that's the case, you have to make some critical decisions on who's going to stay in your life and who could potentially go. And, if everybody has their own decisions to make.
Wow, John, you're such an inspiration, because we all go through some kind of crossroads in our life. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's a nervous breakdown, sometimes it's divorce, sometimes, it's there's just so many big buckets of things that can happen to us in our lives. And so I love that we're talking about all of these different modalities, but I'm curious to know, what is the most important thing you learned about yourself going through this journey?
So I touched upon it earlier. What I just said was I had to learn how to be more vulnerable and be more open. Because as a man, I think, again, I may have said it earlier, is that men probably deal with cancer a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was being more vulnerable, accepting, just kind of coming to, okay, this is the deal right now. I have to accept this. Because your body changes when you're dealing with cancer. Some permanent changes and some not so permanent changes, but you're going to change. And so I think that was the biggest thing that I learned, is how to be more open, more vulnerable, more mindful. I started to pay attention to things that I didn't pay attention to before. Not completely off my radar paying attention, but I was more in tune with people's feelings as well, and more mindful. And maybe in the past, that wasn't something I was being. I was just kind of, going through every day, you're on a hamster wheel, work or whatever, life. And I started to really get in more tune with what was going on, not only in my life and how I felt, but also how others felt who were around me. That was a really big positive change for me, but something that was a little foreign to me at the time. But, I always say, getting a diagnosis of cancer was not all of a bad thing for me. I learned so much. I met so many great people from this journey, and I am super grateful for that. So I did learn a lot, and now hopefully I could be a resource to other people. And so what I've learned is that, you got to give back, right? So circling back to the Radical Remission Project, I took Dr. Turner's class up at Omega Institute in New York for 3 days, and it was about the book. I met so many great people. There was like 120 other cancer patients in the room. Dr. Turner asked me to speak about my journey on Sunday morning, and I did in front of everybody. And I could speak in front of people in my professional world, but when you talk about yourself and the medical and that and what you went through, it was a little challenging for me. And then I went back to take Dr. Turner's her class on becoming a radical remission instructor. And that's what I did. I went back there. So now I'm a certified radical remission project instructor, which means that I could teach the book. I'm not a coach, but I did get some other classes. I did go and get a holistic health and wellness consultant certificate as well, because I just wanted to learn more about the structure of how you can help other people. And, what's the first thing they can do? What's the second thing? More of a structure to it, instead of just me talking about it.
John, I just, before I know Kim wants to say something, I just have to say that you're the embodiment to me of attitude is everything, because there's a motivational speaker I heard once who said, are you going to make life make you bitter or better? And like, clearly you've taken the lemons and turned them into lemonade. So just had to say that. But I know Kim wants to.
Well, thank you. But that's not always the case. You can't be happy or be positive every single minute. You will through a roller coaster. But if you stay the course and you stick to your goals, some days are going to be great. Some days you're going to have to deal with your illness that you're dealing with, or people, or whatever you're dealing with in your life. But just stay the course.
Hey, John, I'm curious. So in which way are you teaching Dr. Turner's book? Is this like in a group setting, live classes, or virtually? And how can people, find one of your courses?
I am not teaching any courses right now because I'm working full time, but I have several colleagues that are out there. Like I have a few people that run what they're calling the health navigators, and they are on, by the way, the Radical Remission Project. If you go on their workshops, all of the instructors are there, and all of the courses that are being offered all around the world right now. I believe there's about 35 to 40 instructors total. And it's funny because I'm one of only 2 men who are on that site. And I wish I had more time to do this, to get out there full time and do this. And maybe someday I will. Right now, I'm still working full time. So, and I share when I can, and I talk to people when I can about, radical remission and how they can help themselves with cancer. But there's a lot of there's a lot of women out there that are doing that who are involved in the Radical Remission Project. So if everybody goes to the radicalremissionproject.com, and go on their workshops, the workshops are listed there, and plus all the bios and backgrounds of all the trainers are there. Most of them are survivors of cancer. And I think they're the best teachers, or they're connected with somebody, like a sister or a brother or a mom or dad or parent, sibling that went through cancer and passed on.
Thank you.